Lesson 6, Unit 2, Stakeholder Analysis. The first step in stakeholder analysis is to identify all the project stakeholders. With this list, you will be able to identify all groups, people, and institutions who will be affected positively or negatively by the project. A good practice is for the project team to start by identifying all the stakeholders, and then the list can be reviewed and updated by other staff in the organization that have knowledge of the potential project stakeholders. Once the list is complete, and with the help from the project team, you will need to determine the levels of influence and interest from each stakeholder. The goal of a stakeholder analysis is to have a complete list that defines and identifies all the key project stakeholders, internal and external, with their levels of interest and influence in the project. You will use this information to prioritize them by organizing this information on an influence-interest matrix. The analysis will increase your understanding of what motivates the stakeholders and what is needed to win and sustain their support to the project. Influence is defined as the extent to which a stakeholder can weigh its power or authority on the project and, therefore, affect its outcomes. Influence is a measure of the control the stakeholder has on the project. Some of the factors likely to lead to higher influence include the extent of control over the project funding and the extent to which the stakeholders informs decision-making around approaches and selection of activities. Stakeholders with high level of influence include the donor and local government. Interest is defined as the extent to which stakeholders' problems and needs are affected by project activities or the desired outcomes. Interest is also the level of participation or engagement on the project and how the project outcomes meet other objectives of the stakeholders. Stakeholder interest is a measure of how well the stakeholder understands the challenges the project seeks to deal with and the strategy, approach, plans, and outcomes, and how the stakeholder commitment to the project goals are expressed in their support. The information on each stakeholder levels of influence and interest can be captured in a matrix that identifies their position relevant to their influence, interest, and their level of understanding and commitment to the project. The matrix contains the following information: name of the stakeholder, the level of influence, the type of influence, the level of interest, the type of interest, and the category for each stakeholder based on their levels of interest and influence. The stakeholder map is a simple 2x2 matrix that helps identify the category for each stakeholder organized by the levels of influence and the levels of interest. There are 4 categories: A, B, C, and D. In this matrix, you will group all key stakeholders based on their levels of interest and influence on the project. For each category, you will need to use a different strategy to manage the relationship with the stakeholders. This will help you optimize your time and resources on those stakeholders that are more important to the success of the project and develop specific strategies to get them involved and support the project. The category A is for stakeholders that have a high level of influence and interest in the project. This is a group of stakeholders that you need to keep committed and meet their expectations. You will need to manage the relationships very closely and find opportunities to involve them in the project and consult them on critical issues. Category B is made by stakeholders that have high level of influence but low interest in the project. This is a group of stakeholders that you need to keep them satisfied, understand their issues, and find opportunities to increase their interest in the project. You find opportunities to get them involved. This is a critical group, especially if you need their support. Category C is for stakeholders with low influence but high interest. This is a group of stakeholders that you need to keep them informed and maintain open communications to maintain their levels of interest. Category D stakeholders have low interest and low influence in the project. This is a group of stakeholders that you need to keep under observation and monitor for changes in interest and influence. This is a group where you don't need to spend too much time. Here are 5 rules for successful working with the stakeholders. Identify your stakeholders and understand their interests. Prioritize your stakeholders by levels of influence and interest and invest the time to understand their needs. Develop a communication and engagement strategy and work the plan. And monitor changes over time as the stakeholders shift their levels of interest and influence.